I make useful English lit study videos. Hello everyone, I'm Jen and I make useful English lit study videos on Shakespeare, poetry, fiction, literary devices and more to help you get top grades in the subject. So if this sounds like exactly what you need, then make sure to hit that subscribe button below so you never miss out on my top grade analysis videos ever. Today in this video, we are looking at Jordan Baker in The Great Gatsby. Jordan is a secondary character, occupying less screen time than Daisy Buchanan, but more than Myrtle Wilson, whom I've done another video on, which you can check out here. So Jordan is a professional golfer and Daisy's childhood friend, both being Southern belles from well-off families in Louisville, Kentucky. Jordan is also the love interest of Nick Carraway, the novel's narrator. But the relationship doesn't work out in the end, which is something we'll discuss later in this analysis. Now, to some readers, Jordan may seem like a bit of a flat, unappealing character who neither excites nor intrigues. After all, she acts in a way that seems to suggest she's a bit too good for everyone, and is otherwise either indifferent or cynical. But a closer reading will suggest that Jordan has much more emotional depth than that. She also serves two critical functions in the novel. First, her pragmatism amplifies the tragedy of Gatsby and the Buchanans' romanticism. And second, she humanizes Nick by sharpening his awareness of his own personal biases, and as such, enables Fitzgerald to craft a complex narratorial voice. Like Nick, Jordan is a go-between character for the most important relationship in the novel, which is the one between Gatsby and Daisy. In Chapter 3, Jordan gets pulled into a surprise private meeting by Gatsby at one of his parties. After telling Nick that she's heard the most amazing thing, but swore she wouldn't tell and is here tantalizing him, we don't find out what it is that she's heard until Nick reveals it later in Chapter 4, which is that Gatsby was one of the army officers who had courted Daisy when they were still in Louisville 5 years ago. Jordan had not recognized Gatsby because he's changed so much since then. So in terms of narrative engagement, this creates a moment of suspense which adds to the mystique of Gatsby, until, of course, piecemeal by piecemeal, Nick provides clarifying truth about the man's humble origins and slowly strips the mythical aura off of Gatsby. But by deliberately withholding information after the party, Jordan adds to the mythification of Gatsby, which serves to sharpen the rags to riches contrast between J. Gatsby, the wealthy, larger-than-life lord of the mansion, versus J. Gats, the poor but ambitious Midwesterner army officer that we eventually find out about. Jordan's relationship with Nick is interesting, not because of what it reveals about her, but rather what it shows Nick about his own blind spots. So in many ways, Nick and Jordan are similar, but also crucially different personalities. Both exude this air of cynical worldliness, as if they've already seen too much of the world and its disappointments to be able to muster up much optimism or zeal. Notice that Nick always describes Jordan as bored or jaunty, and there's this I don't care much about anything vibe that she seems to always carry about her. But the one distinction between them, at least from Nick's point of view, is that while Jordan is incurably dishonest, he prides himself on being one of the very few honest men I've ever known. Jordan's dishonesty is illustrated with the anecdote about her moving the golf ball closer to the pit at one of the tournaments, which Nick recalls in Chapter 3. At first read, this casts Jordan in a derogatory light, as her willingness to cheat just to win and hold up social appearances says something about her lax morals. But while we may be quick to judge her, it's worth considering if compared to Gatsby, Daisy, and Tom, she's really so dishonest, when all the others are arguably even more troublingly dishonest because they are above all dishonest with themselves. At least Jordan is honest about her dishonesty, whereas Gatsby, Daisy, and Tom willfully indulge in their dishonest delusions. Gatsby lies to himself about Daisy's feelings for him, Daisy lies to herself about Tom's character, and Tom lies to himself about just how much power he actually has over his life. And compared to the rest, Jordan differs because she has acute self-awareness, as when Nick describes, Jordan Baker instinctively avoided clever, shrewd men, and now I saw that this was because she felt safer on a plane where any divergence from a code would be thought impossible. She was incurably dishonest. She wasn't able to endure being at a disadvantage, and given this unwillingness, I suppose she had begun dealing in subterfuges when she was very young in order to keep that cool, insolent smile turned to the world and yet satisfy the demands of her hard, jaunty body. By the way, guys, I'd massively appreciate it if you could hit the thumbs up button below, subscribe to my channel, and switch on that bell notification if you find this video helpful so far. This would really help me carry on making these useful English Lit study videos so that you can get top grades in the subject and we can inspire more people to enjoy the study of literature. So the phrase being at a disadvantage implies that Jordan's dishonesty is a necessary coping mechanism for her, because she lives in a world that actually condones a much more dishonest force, i.e. gender bias. Women back then were markedly disadvantaged in a world where men yielded power, which is also manifested in the way that Daisy and Myrtle are constantly subject to Tom's emotional and physical abuse. Jordan then is painted here in a feministic and sympathetic light, as someone who may be flawed and dishonest, but at least has the strength of character to want to survive and thrive in a society that's filled with subterfuges anyway. It made no difference to me. Dishonesty in a woman is a thing you never blame deeply. I was casually sorry, then I forgot. Nick's defensive tone here is subtle and cautious, but it's important because it reflects both his subjective bias, because of course he has feelings for her, and his empathy. Now, if you've seen my other video analysing Nick's role as a narrator, you know that I argue Nick is likeable precisely because he is so bluntly honest about his flaws and unreliability. And in this way, he's not unlike Jordan. Through his evaluations of Jordan, we see Nick's honesty about the limitations of his judgment. While Nick is someone who cares about morals and honesty and tries his best to uphold these traits in himself, he knows that he's also prone to double standards, and that when it comes to matters of heart, he's just as ready to overlook moral lapses when his romantic biases get in the way of better judgment. So in the final exchange between Nick and Jordan, there's a sense of muted but also palpable sadness about how the relationship eventually turns out. Initially, Jordan comes across in her usual cool as a cucumber demeanour, as if she doesn't and hasn't ever really cared about Nick after all. I saw Jordan Baker and talked over and around what had happened to us together, and what had happened afterward to me. And she lay perfectly still, listening in a big chair. She was dressed to play golf, and I remember thinking she looked like a good illustration. Her chin raised a little jauntily, her hair the colour of an autumn leaf, her face the same brown tint as the fingerless glove on her knee. When I had finished, she told me without comment that she was engaged to another man. Now, clearly, this is a woman who needs to win, and by telling Nick that she's engaged, she communicates the message that Nick may have cast her aside, but she never loved him in the first place. So his lack of attention doesn't matter. Indeed, Jordan says so when she tells him, "I don't give a damn about you now, but it was a new experience for me." And I felt a little dizzy for a while. The vehemence in her tone, though, suggests that her true emotions don't quite square with her words. As a character who is rarely, if ever, emotional, Jordan here reveals that, contrary to what she claims, she in fact feels a sense of loss and wistfulness over how things had turned out for Nick and herself. Now, she reminds Nick of a conversation about driving they had back in the party in chapter 3. Do you remember you said a bad driver was only safe until she met another bad driver? Well, I met another bad driver, didn't I? I mean, it was careless of me to make such a wrong guess. I thought you were rather an honest, straightforward person. I thought it was your secret pride. Now, as we know, this novel is full of bad drivers and bad driving, and the best example being Daisy's disastrous driving, which eventually leads to Myrtle's death, and eventually Gatsby's death. But in the context of Nick and Jordan's failed relationship, the bad driving is not of the road, but instead of communication. Jordan's wrong guess is of Nick's affections for her. She thought that he would have confessed his love for her long ago, and that he never did would reflect that perhaps he isn't as honest as she had thought he was. Is this the expression of hurt feelings or the voice of a hurt pride? Or is it simply an honest misunderstanding on Jordan's part? Because in truth, Nick had never truly loved her, or at least loved her strong enough, and Nick's final response to all of her indignation is telling. "I'm 30, I said. I'm 5 years too old to lie to myself and call it honour." Now, had Nick pursued a relationship with Jordan, he would have been lying to himself about his feelings, and we all know from Gatsby and Daisy's relationship the sort of havoc that dishonest, misunderstood feelings could cause. So really, Nick is suggesting to Jordan, I've saved you from a potential car crash here, no pun intended, because I'm not even sure about how I feel. And this is reflected by his emotional ambivalence when he walks away from her, angry and half in love with her and tremendously sorry. But ultimately, confused feelings about each other is perhaps what underpin human relationships, happy or tragic ones alike. And that's it for my character analysis on Jordan Baker, everyone. What do you think the point of Jordan Baker is? Do you sympathise with her, or do you find her to just be wholly unlikable? Go ahead and comment below and let me know. Otherwise, please hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Please do also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already so that you never miss out on a top grade English Lit study video from me going forward. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!